This is day 519 of Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. If you'd like to sponsor upcoming share or more of Arukh HaShulchan Yomi, please contact me directly. We very greatly appreciate it. Today we're doing Shinir Ches, Lamed Beis to Mem. Shinir Ches, Lamed Beis to Mem. That's what I was saying about Shulchan Lamed Beis. That's what I was saying about Shulchan Aruch Sif Tes Zayin. Mutalitain in Fanda, and the Arukh HaShulchan says helpfully Zelkmo Kugel Shalonu. Kinega Eish Mogam Shatzolesbo. You can put a kugel in a place which is opposite the fire, even if the Tziatzolet is Mogam Shatzoles. Alpisha Shuman Shova Shabani Shini Crash Chozevni Mach, even though the fat, which is congealed, is going to become liquidy again. It's going to melt. Certainly a pot which has sauce which became solidified. If you can't see the fat distinctly because it gets absorbed back into the kugel or back into the cooked dish, well, in this case the soup, it's permissible. That's those who are macher and no glachmir. And this mean macher and malcolm tzarich is smoke sorry shara. If it's the case in necessity, you can go on the first fara and be lenient. Akal shara. And Barenford needs to say the came with the Yavashe Bishlach Bishul. Since it's sunny dry, there's no cooking after cooking. Lachem mutali no kegesh. That's you can put opposite the fire. Possession shumur chazem nimaga, that which the fat gets melts again. Ain't so asim shum nolat. There's no prohibition of nolat here. Because it happens on its own. In other words, I think it's a natural process, goes back and forth. It's like you put snow and hail in a cup. It's permissible. Like we put the hail and snow is in a cup of water. Actually, so. I take back what I said. The milk havi is like an ice cube, where as long as it's not nicker and it goes into the water, it's not nolad. And so it's something with the same with sugar in a cup of hot water, and also the fat in the dish. It's only when it's in a pot where you can't tell the oil when it gets mixed back into the cooked dish. Even though it's fried, this kugel, and there is an opinion that there is cooking after frying. It's the second time around, it's also not cooking, it's also frying. There's no frying after frying, because there's a lot of oil, so then it becomes frying. But those who argue say, no. This oil, when this congealed fat, when it melts, is indeed nolad. It's not like snow and hail, the sukkah, the shemen. It's not like sugar and oil, which you put into a cooked dish or into hot liquids. Thus, because there it dissolves and it's not recognizable. But here you see the oil on its own after it's melted from fat to oil, and it's also. But in pot it's mutter because you can't distinguish, just like the ice cube in the cup. Mr. Boer wants to say though, according to Yesh Machmir, it's also even in a pot because the oil floats to the top and it's nicker. I guess if you have very oily soup, you can see the oil floating to the top. It says, but the Arukh HaShulchan says they're bemis mutzah. And the of the answer because you can't see it, distinguish it on its own. A few days zoom, even according to spinning, come in ha'infanda at smart ne'asa. The kugel doesn't become ulcer as a result of this. Just preferentially don't do it. But the primary opinion is the first one. And if it's necessary, you can rely on this opinion. There's nothing to do with putting something back in a stove or an oven. There's a separate problem you might come to rake the coals. kochlin mutter, but to put it next to the this oven, an oven is permissible, which causes simulation. Gimel ba'aymash because of simin shin chav steve chav gimel. Lam gimel chen mutter litain toch ha kochlin. I guess kochlin is not it's not an oven. It must be something else. At least I don't remember what it is. Kochlin. Something to do with koch. I assume cooking. Yes, it's a tanur based hachoref. It's the heating oven, which they used to have a little chamber in which they used to put the food to heat up. So you can put it into this kochlin, basar b'dagim, which is very similar to our warming ovens, which caterers use nowadays. You can put in there basar b'dagim, meat and fish, v'taikchitz, v'kasi, v'esha, whatever these are, v'kugel chesibem. It should not be a lot of oil, so that the oil flows out on its own. If you really need it, like it's a major kiddush and shul, then you can even do it if there's the fat will start flowing as oil. I'm talking about usher, but not into a real oven. Unless it's which is close to being cold, because there's not so much heat or coals left. That's Gamatano ain't this because then even in the oven there's no prohibition, which I'm assuming ration and gimel, siflan base, yin sham. B'shari tshuva sikon hay b'shem is with brackets. B'shari tshuva sim kufla mit hay. Hevi b'shem sif cotton lamed hay. Hevi b'shem marit shebeir Constantina, which I believe is Constantinople. Noslas shivcha muya shuvcha muya. They put the kishka of our tiny golas and the chicken, the chamein to get it hot in the actual oven. B'shachris Shabbos kol machila in the morning before they eat. Marit mitam shatrim shalom pischamin atzad have can eat kamo connected madura ayin sham tzarchim. Marit actually is very kiddush to make because our ovens they don't open on top, so the heat with the heat rising underneath the things at the opening, but our oven's up on the side, so therefore it's always considered to be minat sad, and therefore you can be more lenient. But the Arukh HaShulchan is says tzarchim on that, but it's important to keep that opinion in mind in a sticky situation. Lamadal, that's the two b'shulchan aruch. The davar lachshing stanim. It's a tunshul hold that when something is moist, is cooled down. Yesh bishul achar bishul. There is cooking after cooking. Also, aniach klish yesh bo davar cham sheni yad solesbo. You can't put a vessel which has something hot, which is not yad solesbo. Agabe kedera on a pot shechama kokach, which is so hot. B'chtei she'elyon yachol ischamei mechama, that the upper pot can get heated from the lower pot. So the point that the upper pot can get yad solesbo as well. Zel bishul, because this is cooking. They're told also or ku'ur, because cooking on a pot is like cooking on a fire. The derivative of fire is like fire. But if it's dry thing, it's permissible. Also, the thing, the moist thing is still yatzoletisbo. We can put it on a hot pot, because like this, and preserve its heat. That shouldn't get cold. That's not good. There's no cooking here. Because it didn't become cold. It's still yatzoletisbo. Yeshim by those that say that feel a bashil cold circle, even if it's not fully cooked, you can put it onto this pot. Chagavna yesh bishul achar bishul. In this case, it should be bishul achar bishul. Gabalonit standing, even it hasn't cooled off. You come nevertheless agabe ketera mutter on top of a pot. It's still mutter. Shum da agabe ketera shali the lavoli de bishul gomer. Because on top of a pot, you're never going to come to actual full complete cooking. That seems to be the task. Arukh doesn't like this. Like this. I don't know this is true. The common Chokubas and many argue on this opinion of the Taz. And the Iker is not like the Taz. I am Sifan Vav. Avafilu Bakadera, Simuna Bidavra Mosif Hevel. Even if the pot is insulated, something which is going to which can add heat theoretically, right? If the pot was directly on the fire. But nevertheless, mutar hamid al gaba No, I'm sorry. He cares to move Davar Mosi Febo. So I thought, well, I'm not sure, but I think he did it Derech Isser. I don't know. But anyway, it was an insulation material which adds heat. Become a gaba cliche but the lach. Then something you can put on it another keli which has something more to it. She adds soledes if that second keli, the second pot on top is yatzlas, but nigar bishula, and it's gonna be cooked the ein ze hatmona, the ein ze katmona. Um, I, obviously, typically it's not hatmona, but I'm not sure. But how we got to have that lower keli there, which is Talmud Davar Mosi Febo. Anyway, because Lashitas Tur Vashulchan. So according to Shulchan Shitas Rambam, who's more makel than Bishul Achar Bishul Ap B'Davar. There's no cooking after cooking in b'sani moist. Rabbeinu Amay is kilas Dei Azub Sif Tezvav. Kasham Sif Lamed Aleph. Rambam does mention this in Rambam. Butagam Kshe'Elyon Ein Hayat. So let us know. You're allowed to put the top one back on the bottom pot, even the top one is no longer Yad. So let us know. He writes in the brackets. Zel Kavas Magavram Sif Katan Chaf Aleph and Machzis Hashekel. Lamaches. Yeshiv Foshim, those who explain the Zesh Yitar Lami Klishi Yesh Lach, that which you're allowed to put a vessel which has moist stuff, Shat Lesbo, where it is Yat Lesbo. Gabi. Want to close the door? Sorry, I got called away for a minute. Let's go back to being a Mohammed Hay here. There's those who call, those who explain, that you're allowed to put a vessel which has something moist, which is still Yatz on top of a pot which is in a state of Hatmona. That's even when the bottom pot is on the fire. Those who say if the bottom pot is on the fire, it's always awesome. Because that's like putting something deliberately on a stove on Shabbos. The first opinion holds, came to the second, since the pot interrupts. You're not putting it directly on the oven. The Bekiro Medasal Ish Mamish, in the oven, you put something mamish on the fire. That is the primary opinion. The problem with putting something on a stove is that you might come to rake the coals. And here it's standing on a pot, yesh heker, there is a heker. But it definitely has to be distant from the fire. Actually, it's bashal called sarka if it's not fully cooked. And that's also the only coin opinion that allows you to put it back when it's not fully cooked. Okay, we already explained that this is not the case. The die shows that few day show says, but even when the second opinion that forbids it, if you took the upper pot from the stove, I guess it's sitting on the stove after dark, you can put it back on top of another pot. There's no problem here of shihia. When you put it back onto the oven, to the stove, and there's no problem here if you put it back on the stove, obviously, because it was on the stove ready for Shabbos, and therefore it's also okay to put it on top of a pot. A few years ago, they had this idea of a blech, which was made with liquid in between the top and the bottom, and the rationale was that this was always considered to be kedera gabe kedera. I don't know if they still sell them, but it was a big issue at the time when you can use it, because it was Yatzel, but the principle of that blech was that double the top and bottom, and the water in the middle was like made everything kedera gabe kedera. Lamed Vav. Session is by the Yatzel mutar and Yacha gabe kedera. As I said, Yatzel, you can put it back on the pot. That's what I mean. Where you can also seal its the opening of that pot with dough. If you have dough which was baked yesterday, not baked, which was kneaded yesterday. I kind of shut off. Obviously, Nido on Shabbos. Lo cheshem marech, not concerned whether you're going to smear it. The vadigam batik shaykh miruach, because obviously there is possibility of smearing with dough. Shemlein so same harbe, because not really sealing it that much. It's just that it shouldn't be open. It's not going to smooth it down in a nice way. It's just going to have it clean a little bit. And miruach is only when you smear it with your finger very nicely so to be smooth. But if indeed you're making a masterpiece out of this, then it's also. That's who everything you smear. The reason we're not concerned you're going to smear, this is they'll show kala. This is just for a short amount of time because you're just putting on the ketera in order to heat it up a little bit. You're not going to come to smear it in a comprehensive way. The brackets, he says, so okay, this is the Gemara. We're not concerned that the dough itself is going to be baked on account of the heat. The Mechamed said that's not your kavana. It's not psik reisha. You caught them the test of Duke, and this is the evidence for something in the Taz, which I don't see what that he brings down, so we'll not pay attention to it for now. Lamed Zayin. If you have something dry which is completely cooked, you can put it opposite a bonfire. There's no cooking after cooking by a dry thing. So also to put something dry and cold, which is fully cooked, on top of a heater, which is by the fire, on top of an urn. So by the fire, is also missile. Anything which is mutter opposite a bonfire where it's yatz with a gam agabi mecham shalish. It's also put on top of a pot on top of the fire. Yeshin the aser. No, some people aser. Mitam the zedom agabi because it looks like you're running on an oven deliberately on Shabbos. So also mitam which is prohibited because you might come to rake the coals. Feeling is bashal cold soaking even when it's completely cooked. And it's stomach ralo and it's getting worse from spending more time in the fire. Also, you're still allowed to put something deliberately on an oven on Shabbos. What does it make you putting on top of another pot? But it's not the same thing. We're leaning like first opinion. Low down Akira, by Akira, by the stove. There's no gap between it and the stove, between the pot and the fire. If it's on top of an urn, that pot is the interruption. And just like you weren't concerned when you put it opposite a bonfire, you might come to rate the coals of the bonfire, because there's hecker that is distant from the bonfire. So to hear this hecker was having the simon lamed off. Says to see ches, but then sheni's bar, but so this is right. So come rotev. If it's a cooked dish which has sauce with stomach v'yafalo and it gets better over time, also the miracle everybody holds its also. Akal meaning Kamoshi bar. The Aussie ten cliches will double lachsh in a yad soledespo. You're not able to take a keli which has something moist, which is not yad soledespo, and put it agabe kadera tzmun and put it on a insulated pot. And mochan so it's Aussie ten agabe mecham. Now put it on top of the pot on top of the fire, on top of the urn. Even though the heat of the urn is not the same as the heat of a pot, nevertheless, killing man also rocking with stomach of yafilo. Nevertheless, it's a more lenient in that it's only I'm not sure we come. It's more lenient. Then also like mitzdamek v'yafel. It's only also if it's mitzdamek v'yafel. Okay, I'm not sure. Ashkenazim really don't differentiate between mitzdamek v'yafel and mitzdamek v'ralo. So I guess it's going to be Yosef. That's why it makes a difference. The Shabbat says that Mechaber. Mechaber would also answer Islamic, even Islamic Rallo, but on top of the Mecham. Okay, I guess more you interpret the Mechaber more severely. Arukh HaShulchan says, in brackets, Kenira is Dadi Kavanoso. This seems, I understand his intent. And then it says something which we will not be able to understand unless we saw the Magen Avraham inside. So let's go to Lama test. Find his body, the Kli Rishon Mevasha. We already clarified that Kli Rishon cooks. Baram said, B'Siv V'Chof, the Medivre Rambam, Mevu Mizbar, the Zemi Rabbanon. We already explained that off the fire, it's only the Rabbanon. I mean, the Torah, Eno Vasha, El Mem, Esaish, Torah, it's only Bishop, it stands on the fire. Shkem Mizbar, Shas Yerushalmi, and Shem, this is clear from Bavli and Yerushalmi. Medivre Torah Shalom, no Mash became, but doesn't see a Torah Shalom in that way. Even though they don't distinguish between the rights and the Rabbanim, that seems superficially, at least from their words, to have a bishul gam in Torah that Kli Rishon or even off the fire is absolute bishul in Torah. Seems to be the opinion of Tesis, in several places. Of the Rambam, Rashi sounds like the Rambam, and he says in the brackets, the Rashi writes, you're allowed to put something into Klisha once you took it off the fire. How you should fish bin Zelazay. It was the distinction between on the fire or off the fire. Ran says that that's the opinion of Yushami, not our Shas. Means that it's Tzarchian Shregam Shas Masha Yakin Moshe Sam Sivchav Aleph Ayin Sham. Arukh HaShulchan says, I proved already in Sivchav Aleph that our Shas makes a similar chiluk. Mem Kli Rishon Mevasha Filu Achai Shiviru Mal Eish Kozman Sheyatz Lesbo. When it's the rice of the Rabbanon, when it's bishul as long as it's hot of Yatz Lesbo. If it's not Yatz Lesbo, it's mutter. Avagav the Inyan is Sibah the Yisrael the Gama Chakach Mavli Mavli. In terms of you're there are those who say that even if it's not Yatz Lesbo, that it still causes absorption between one thing and another thing. Absorption is not cooking. But and it's simple that in terms of absorbing, actually giving off and absorbing, that hacks in Kli Rishon. And then see that's the Kli Rishon when it's still Yatz Leresbo is Mafli to right. So therefore, it could be this is the Rabbanon even if it's no longer Yatz Leresbo. V'yesh Slovenia gam Kli Sheni Mafli Kshatz Leresbo Sham. Coach Kram Sham. And also even Kli Sheni is Mafli, but for your their purposes, but only if it's Yatz Leresbo. V'akomi Tam said, all of this is a Gzeira. But Bishul Midaraisa, it doesn't cook Kli Rishon. For the Sodom Torah, Yesh Bishul, even those who say that there is Bishul in Kli Rishon, when it's off the fire, motive, they can see that Yerushalmi and also Yerushalmi is not holy. Wait, Kosh Kosav. Pichoch Ein Lo, Lachmir Lo, Bekli Sheni, Shiatz Leresbo, Lamni Machmer, except for Kali Bishul, by Kli Sheni, which is Yatz Leresbo, and for Lo Bekli Bishul, Sheni Yatz Leresbo. Now by Kli Sheni, if it's not Yatz Leresbo.